Lord Varvatos only has one wish. He wants to know defeat. Everyone only sees him as the demon lord, and that's why others should recognize him as a fellow human once they see him miserably defeated. However, the enemies capable of beating him are all gone now. He visits the body of his friend and decides that maybe he will get his wish if he reincarnates. Thousands of years later, Ard Meteor's parents celebrate his 10-year birthday. They didn't know that their son is the reincarnation of the demon Lord Varvatos, who is now peacefully living in a completely ordinary country town. The level of education and magic in this world had declined since his time, but he was once again blessed with decent health, stamina, and athleticism, so it didn't take him much effort to become skilled in martial arts. His parents ask him what he wants to do now that he's 10 years old, but Ard only has one dream. He wants to find a person who does not look at him with fear and forge a friendship of equals. Outside, he sees some kids playing and he stares at them, urging them to come talk to him. However, the kids just get creeped out and scared of his stare and they run away. Ard doesn't understand what happens and wonders if there's still some unconcealable majesty interfering with their minds and blocking their approach. Thus, he decides to take action instead of waiting. Downtown, he spies a couple of girls walking toward him, but his body starts shaking. He never feared during his final battle with the gods, but now, he seems like he has stomach pain from anxiety. He crouches over in pain, and when the girls see him, he tries to give them a smile. However, this just freaks out the girl and they all flee. Ard shouts at them to be his friend, but this just frightens them more. He lets out his frustration at the forest, leveling tree after tree with his magic. That afternoon, the mayor, Sir Allhide, notices his mood and asks him what's bothering him. After hearing his story, Sir Allhide promises to teach him a very simple method to make friends. No matter when or who he interacts with, he should just be kind and respectful. Ard thanks him for his advice and runs off to go implement it at once. With great respect and humility, Ard tries to ask the kids around town to be his friend. However, the boys ignore him while the girls run away again from his weirdness. Thus, Ard is back again in the forest contemplating if he should just destroy the world. Monsters try to attack him, but Ard just snaps his fingers and kills them. All of a sudden, she hears the shouts of a girl. Ard flies into the air and to the voice's location. In a clearing, he sees a girl confronting an ancient wolf. The girl deftly uses magic to shoot at the wolf. Ard wonders if the girl is also venting out her frustration on the wolf like he did. Meanwhile, at home, Sir Allhide is sharing his worries about his daughter with Ard's parents over a cup of tea. His daughter had completely closed herself off due to the bullying and gossiping she endured about her lineage. Ard's father assures Allhide that his decision to move there is good since there are far fewer eyes out in the country than in the royal capital. Back in the forest, the girl destroys the wolf with her magic. Her appearance reminds Ard of his old comrade Lydia, and he mistakenly calls out her name. The noise alerts the girl to his presence, so Ard shows himself and compliments her magic. He was hoping to get close to her, but instead, he blurts out and asks her to be his friend. The girl shouts at him that he doesn't even know the first thing about her and she flees. The girl runs straight to Allhide and cries out that she hates the countryside. Meanwhile, Ard also returns to Allhide to report back how his methods worked. However, he was surprised to see the little girl earlier in Allhide's arms. From that day onward, Ard starts chasing around Irina, the girl, telling her that it must be fate for them to be friends since their parents are also friends. He tried everything, even offering her a bouquet of roses, but she rejects him all the same. One night, Ard volunteers to accompany Irina home after she vents her frustrations in the forest, but she flees from him yet again. Ard goes back to his room and thinks over his friendship plans when he suddenly hears a noise from outside. Monsters have started attacking the town. His father holds off the monsters, but Allhide arrives and tells them that Irina is still in the mountains. Ard realizes that Irina ran into the mountains because he was chasing her earlier, so he volunteers to go rescue her. He then flies off into the air, leaving the two men surprised. In the mountains, Irina was surrounded by a band of goblins. The goblin leader urges her to call out for help to his family and friends, but Irina remembers how everyone calls her a monster and leaves her. She tells the goblin to kill her since life is not worth living. Nevertheless, when the goblins approach her, she screams for help, so Ard electrocutes the goblins attacking her. He slowly lands on the field and kills the goblins. The goblin leader orders his minions to attack him, but Ard just makes them blow up. The goblin leader flees in fear, but Ard stares at him and makes him explode. He offers his hand to Irina, but Irina states that she wants to die since she's lonely and sad and no one understands. Ard tells her that he has no idea about her circumstances, but he understands the suffering that isolation brings. That's why he wants to be her friend. He promises to never betray her since he once betrayed his best friend and he never wanted that to happen again. And so, Irina finally accepts his hand. A few years later, Irina wakes up Ard and invites him to enroll in the Academy of Magic with her. At the National Academy of Magic, Headmaster Gold gladly welcomes the two children of the three great heroes. Headmaster Gold also informs them that they are famous for clearing out hundreds of goblins during the demon attack on their town. Thus, they were exempted from the practical exam and they only have to take the written exam. After the exam, Irina is elated to see that she passed with flying colors. Meanwhile, Ard was shocked to see that he got 0 out of 100. It turns out that his answers far surpassed what has been hypothesized by modern methodology, that even hexagon class mages like the headmaster struggle to come up with such answers. The headmaster announces that he truly lives up to the potential of his parents, the great mage, Jack Meteor, and his wife Carla, who protected their royal capital from an evil god a decade ago. In their class, they are immediately swarmed by their classmates wanting to be friends with them. Nevertheless, there are still noble students annoyed that countryside commoners like them are getting the attention. They then notice that one of the nobles is bullying a scared succubus girl. Irina shouts at the noble to stop, but the noble smiles at her and introduces himself as Alraldo Spencer of the Spencer Duchy, and the girl belongs to the family of a count that serves his own. Ard interjects and tells him that that doesn't make it acceptable to say or do whatever he wants. Alraldo haughtily suggests that if Ard manages to beat him in a duel, then maybe he'll consider listening to him. Irina gasps and informs Ard that Alraldo actually has enough power to be the youngest man to earn the square rank within the kingdom. A woman then enters the classroom and scolds them for already starting a fight in her class. Ard instantly recognizes her voice while the other students are starstruck to see her. She is Lady Olivia, one of Demon Lord Varvado's top generals. Ard is confused to see her there and he gets nervous when he looks at her because he knows Olivia would be furious with Varvados for suddenly abandoning his job and reincarnating thousands of years ago. However, Olivia takes an interest in him and allows their duel. On the academy grounds, the two students face each other off about to start their duel. Ard wants to finish this whole thing without Olivia catching on to his true identity. When the duel starts, Alraldo throws a bolt of lightning at Ard, causing a large explosion. However, Ard is still standing and the students are amazed he managed to activate the spell Mega Wall without any spell. Alraldo throws a fireball at him and when Ard deflects it again, he compliments him for enduring his Mega Flare. However, Ard thought that it was just a normal flare. Alraldo then creates a barrage of fireballs, amazing the students with how he created a Giga Flare. Ard once again ponders how this is just consecutive normal flares, so he decides to show everyone what a true Giga Flare is. A humongous column of fire appears over Ard and he directs its whole fury at Alraldo. With the fire blazing around him, Alraldo admits defeat and apologizes. Ard cancels the spell and approaches Alraldo. He warns him that now that he saw a real Giga Flare, he better not make the same mistake again. After the fight, Olivia comments that he just didn't cast Giga Flare earlier, so Ard explains that he also cast Mega Wall around Alraldo to protect him from the fire. Everyone is amazed since it turns out that using a double cast is a lost skill. For the next class, Olivia brings them to a nearby dungeon. When they are ordered to team up, throngs of people surround Ard and Irina, but they elect to instead party up with the bullied girl earlier. Her name is Jenny and she thanks them for the offer. As for their class, their objective is to get the pelt of a black wolf, a rank B+ monster. They encounter a pack of them, but a single attack from both Ard and Irina kills them on the spot. Jenny apologizes for being useless compared to them, so Ard volunteers to teach himself magic. At first, she had trouble doing conventional magic due to her having low self-esteem from years of bullying. To overcome this, Ard teaches him a self-made technique called script magic. It involves using the mana in the air to power your magic by drawing magic circles. Jenny succeeds in learning Ard's technique and he hugs Ard as thanks. They were about to get the Black Wolf's pelt when they fell into a trap pit. The next thing they know is that they're now at the bottom of the dungeon. The dungeon boss, a minotaur, appears and starts attacking them. However, Ard just calmly states that he'll be teaching the final lessons on script magic. He blocks the Minotaur's club with his hands and punches it away to gain some distance. Then, he draws multiple magic circles in the air. Since it uses mana from the environment, one can use script magic consecutively. The numerous magic circles pummel the Minotaur with attacks and it falls to the ground. Ard then tells Jenny to muster up her courage and deliver the final blow. Memories of her bullying flash in her mind, but Jenny decides that she doesn't want to run anymore. She creates several magic circles and kills the Minotaur. After celebrating their win, they bring back the Minotaur's horn to Olivia to pass the class. Alraldo loudly shouts that Jenny is only riding on the strength of her teammates, and he insults their team. As such, Ginny slaps him to the ground and warns him not to insult her friends. The next day, Headmaster Gold asks Ard to join the student battle event their school is conducting since the Queen is attending. If she sees Ard's excellent performance, then she might grant the school a larger budget. Ard asks for some time to consider it. If he refuses, they might take away his scholarship status, but he also doesn't want to participate with Olivia watching. Outside, Ginny asks him out on a date. Irina gets jealous at this, so she also tags along. The next day, they all head to a theater. The girls also cling to him, making him feel more tempted. Meanwhile, the play shows Ard's past life and his sweet relationship with his friend Lydia. Ard wants to cry out since the Lydia in his memories was brash and violent, unlike the sweet one they were portraying. After the exhausting play, the two girls quarrel about who gets to drag Ard to their chosen restaurant. In the end, they follow Ginny to her choice, but on the way there, they overhear a plan to kidnap the Queen coming from a group of cloaked figures in an alley. The group then leaves through the sewer and the gang decides to follow them. In the sewers, they follow the group to a large cavern where a huge magic circle is scrawled on the wall. Out of nowhere, another group calls at them from behind and forces them into the cavern. This was all a trap made by the group to lure them in there and capture them. The masked leader agrees with him and then activates the magic circle, setting fire to Ard. He tells them that they only need the target, not all of them. Nevertheless, the fire does not affect Ard and he just extinguishes it. He then destroys the magic circle with one of his attacks, gouging out the wall. He then activates another spell and lightning rains down on all of them, frying all enemies except the masked leader. Ard had left him alive to question him. However, the masked leader transforms himself into his true form, a winged demon. He fires a lightning bolt into the ceiling, creating a hole, and flies out into the city above. Ard tells the others he'll be chasing down the demon, but the girls try to point out that he would be long gone before they can even go back to the surface. Ard reveals that he can actually fly and then flies to give chase. He shoots a fireball at the demon, but the demon manages to reach the city and grab a child. The citizens start running away from the demon. Ard worries that panic will spread throughout the whole city, so he shouts out that there is no need to worry. He, the son of the great mage, Jack Meter, will defeat the demon. The demon asks how exactly he'll fight him when he has a hostage, but Ard asks him what he's talking about. He had already used an illusion spell to trick the demon and return the child to her mother. The demon fires out a lightning bolt at him and Ard casually dodges it. When the demon tries to escape, he fires a large spell at it, lighting up the sky and vaporizing the demon. When Ard lands back on the ground, the mother thanks him for rescuing her daughter while the whole crowd cheers him on. Due to their heroics, they were granted the honor of an audience with Her Majesty the Queen. He gazes at the beautiful Queen, causing a noble to scold him. Thankfully, the Queen comes to his rescue. Meanwhile, Ard is thinking about how to respond. If possible, he wants to secure funding for the academy so he can skip the battle event. All of a sudden, Irina stands up and casually greets the Queen. The whole crowd is shocked, but the Queen just giggles and greets her childhood friend. As for their achievements, the Queen would like to reward them. For Ard, she rewards him with the honor of being her husband. Ard is once again stunned, but Irina and Ginny voice out their disagreement. So instead, the Queen grants him the rank of a Pentagon class mage. The other nobles object to a commoner suddenly gaining the rank, but Ard speaks and rejects it himself. Instead, he asks for his academy to have a higher budget, allowing him to show his gratitude to Headmaster Gold. The Queen is gladdened to see Ard so humble and compassionate, so she instead grants Ard's wish as well as gives him and Irina the Pentagon class rank. To quell the noble's objection, she makes Ard and Irina join the Queen's Shadow, the special forces that answer directly to her. For Ginny, she was granted the Triangle class. In an alley somewhere in the city, another meeting is being held by the mysterious figures. They agree that the commoner Ard is exceptional, but they determine that he is still no match for the monster they serve that hopes to destroy the world. At school, a girl confesses her feelings to Ard once again, something that is happening more and more frequently to Ard. When he rejects the girl's advances, the girl tries to physically seduce him, and thankfully, Irina arrives and her venomous glare scares the girl away. Ard tries to thank Irina for her help, but she just scowls at him and walks away. At his office, Headmaster Gold is talking to an instructor, Professor Jessica, about Ard's situation. Professor Jessica asks Headmaster Gold what's the problem when Ard already secured their increased budget. But Headmaster Gold admits to her that he was hoping to use the battle event to show his powers to the other professors and instate Ard as a professor in the school. Professor Jessica assures the headmaster that she'll find a way to convince Ard. Later that night, Ard is pondering over how to make Irina stop being upset. While thinking, Ginny arrives and shows him her new clothes, a very revealing sleepwear. She had also noticed that Ard's popular with the girls, but it's okay since for her, they could just all share him. However, she would like to be his first time, so she decides to be a bit more aggressive with him. Meanwhile, Irina is in her room regretting how she acted earlier that day. She opens her closet and starts looking for stuff. Back at Ard's room, Ginny asks Ard if he wants to do it. When Ard didn't answer, she used her succubus powers to paralyze him. Afterward, she pushes him onto the bed and comes near him. However, they suddenly get interrupted when Irina barges in. She was planning to apologize to Ard but was then shocked to see Ard and Ginny in bed together. She goes red in the face and starts throwing stuff at Ard. Thankfully, Ginny stops her and asks her why she came with her outfit. Irina admits that she was taught by Ard's mom that she just has to wear a naughty outfit to get boys to accept her apologies. She also starts blaming Ginny for Ard's sudden fame with the girls. Ever since Ginny started flirting with him, all the girls followed suit. However, Ginny fires back that she's just blaming her own failures on other people. With their argument heating up, they just decide to resolve it with a duel. Meanwhile, Ard scolds them for quarreling with each other. He makes them apologize to each other and prohibits the duel. Professor Jessica then barges into the room, who overhears their whole argument. She suggests to them that if they cannot duel, they can just enter the battle event. That way, even Ard cannot complain. Not only that, if they perform well in the event, then the professor's own plans of making Ard an instructor will succeed. Since the two girls received training from Ard, then their performance would reflect Ard's skill in teaching. The two girls hesitate on joining, but when Professor Jessica mentions that making Ard an instructor would also make him wear their cool uniforms, the girls quickly agree. The day of the student battle event arrives and the students showcase their skills. The three great heroes Akka, Ard and Irina's parents were invited to be commentators. Irina's father, Alehide, commentates politely, while Ard's father Jack is bored and his mother Carla is eyeing the girls. Meanwhile, Ard is sitting next to Olivia in the audience seats. When the current battle ended, Irina was called over as the next contestant. She nervously walks up to the stage where her opponent awaits. Meanwhile, Ard wishes for their victory as their teacher, but he also doesn't want to be an instructor. Thus, he settles in praying for them to lose with as few injuries as possible. When the match starts, Irina's opponent immediately throws a fireball at her. She dodges and falls to the floor. She glances at the praying Ard and she immediately regains her strength, so she stands back up and uses her script magic. Multiple magic circles encircle her enemy, and she electrocutes her, knocking her unconscious and winning the fight. As she leaves, she passes by Ginny, who she cheers on in the hopes that they settle their matches in the finals. As the battle event rages on, both Irina and Ginny slowly climb the ranks. Thus, they will truly meet at the finals of the event. From the commentators' stands, Alehide recalls how her daughter had such a lonely childhood. Thankfully, Ard arrived and helped her grow to become a better mage. The two girls meet in the middle of the stage. When the match starts, numerous cloaked figures suddenly stand up from the audience stands. They then abruptly reveal their true forms as demons and start wrecking up the place. Pandemonium spreads all over the arena. Professor Jessica arrives and informs Ard and Olivia that the arena is not the only place being attacked. Thus, they need to split up, with Ard and Olivia helping the other place while she handles the ones in the arena with Irina and Ginny. Ard's parents and Alehide also volunteer to help Ard out. Irina and Ginny are fighting the demons in the middle of the arena. When Ginny was about to be overrun by a demon, Irina saves her and states that they can't lose because they still have to settle their match. An abnormally large monster suddenly appears in front of the two girls in the form of a giant rock golem, which then turns into a diamond. They tried attacking it together, but their magic had no effect. When the golem approaches them, Alehide appears and uses wind to crack and destroy the golem into a million pieces. They are awed at Alehide's strength, but their celebration was cut short when a hand pierces through Alehide's chest. It was Professor Jessica. She reveals that she's not actually Professor Jessica. She is Elzard, the frenzied king of dragons. And all of this was planned just to capture Irina. Ginny starts firing fireballs at Elzard, but her barriers are too strong. With just a flick of her finger, Ginny was blown away. She was about to kill her, but Irina tackles her and threatens to commit suicide if Elzard hurts her friend. As such, Elzard decides to just kidnap Irina and fly away, leaving a weakened Ginny and a bleeding Alehide. Alehide wakes at the nurse's office being healed by Ard. Ard asks him what happened and he narrates how Irina was kidnapped by the frenzied king of dragons, Elzard. Elzard is one of the dragons who nearly destroyed the world several thousand years ago. She is so powerful that she's on par with demons and evil gods. Headmaster Gold asks All-Eyed why such a being would kidnap Irina, but Ard exclaims that that doesn't matter. They should focus on saving her first. Later, All-Eyed and Jack lead Ard to the royal treasury. Ard thanks him for his help and enters it. Jack asks All-Eyed why he's not telling Ard about who they really are. All-Eyed recalls how Irina used to spend all her time locked up in her mansion, afraid of any outsiders. However, she changed after meeting Ard, although that may be because Ard didn't know the truth about them. He's afraid that if he tells the truth to Ard, he might rob Irina of her only friend. Meanwhile, Irina is dreaming of the moment she and Ard became friends. However, Ard suddenly disappears in her dream. She then wakes up to find herself trapped inside a barrier with her hands bound. Elzard is watching her and explains that she wants the blood running in her family. Irina is stunned that she knows about her true bloodline. Elzard then activates a spell and a strange huge blob of creature suddenly appears behind Irina. Elzard explains that the creature is called an Orphan of Chaos. It was created using the flesh from one of the many evil gods that the demon lord Varvatos slew long ago. By sacrificing Irina's blood to the monster with the flesh of an evil god, then Elzard can summon one of the evil gods from the dimension in which they're sealed. Why? Well, she just wants to destroy the current world that has gone soft with love, bonding, and friendship. Irina cries out that Ard will stop her plans, but Elzard smiles and tells her that Ard is still human. What if he learns Irina's secret? He would then come to hate Irina and despise her as a monster. Elzard then starts the ritual and removes the barrier separating Irina from the Orphan of Chaos. Back in the capital, Ard had put on his armor and weapon for the upcoming fight. Ginny arrives, but Ard warns her that he cannot take her to the fight for her own safety. Irina admits that in the past, she never thought she'd have any friends. And yet, Irina had saved her and even called her a friend. Ard smiles and tells her that she should prepare dinner for them when they return. Once he and Irina are back, they can laugh and do silly things together again. Ard then activates his boots and quickly flies to the mountains where Irina is. Meanwhile, Irina is slowly being approached by the Orphan of Chaos. Elzard and the demons are all waiting for her demise, but a strange light suddenly burns the Orphan of Chaos away. Elzard looks to the sky and there is Ard Meteor. Ard lands and casts a 9 spell simultaneously, raining down attacks all over the mountain. Elzard flies high in the sky and dodges the attacks. While they are distracted, Ard heads over to Irina and breaks her bonds. She jumps at Ard and hugs him while crying. Up in the air, Elzard is getting excited over the thought of showing off her true strength. Ard promises to Irina that he'll defeat Elzard, but Elzard speaks up and asks him why he likes Irina so much when she's a monster. She then reveals that Irina's true last name is Laval, and that she's the true royalty of the kingdom. And Irina herself carries the blood of the evil gods. That is why their demon cult, Lars Al Ghul, captured her. Back in the capital, All-Eyed explains to Jack that since their world's religion is centered around the demon lord, all of the evil gods have become subjects of hatred. If the world were to learn that the royal family is descended from evil gods, then it could overthrow the entire nation. That's why they rule indirectly through proxies like the Queen. But because of that also, he and his daughter are forced to hide their true identities. Elzard laughs after revealing Irina's secret, but Ard confidently declares that none of that matters. What matters is that Irina is kinder and more courageous than anyone else. Elzard attacks her with lightning and Ard uses his spear to block it. He then makes the ground beneath Elzard explode, cooking her. He then throws the spear and hits Elzard, blasting her away into the sky. However, it's still not finished. Elzard transforms into her true form, a monstrous dragon. Ard creates a barrier just in time as Elzard breathes an energy attack on them. At the same time, Ard starts casting a spell, and a golden lady appears before him. It was Lydia's spirit and his sword who then starts aiding him in battle. He flies into the air to fight Elzard on her own territory and summons a golden sword to attack her. When Elzard manages to keep up with him, Irina cheers on Ard from the ground. Hearing her, Ard activates his phase 2, and armor starts appearing in his body and his hair turns white. When Elzard tries to cast her spells again, they self-destruct since Ard had already analyzed, understood, and controlled them. Ard then casts one of his strongest spells, Ultimatum Zero. A huge array of magic circles appear over him and it charges his sword. Meanwhile, Elzard also prepares a magic attack of her own to meet Ard's attack. When their magic clashes, a huge explosion occurs which kills Elzard. Meanwhile, Ard orders Lydia to return to his soul. He heads back to Irina, who is amazed at how strong he is. Ard invites him to go back to the city and Irina hardens her resolve to get stronger so he can stand beside Ard. In a dark cave somewhere, a red-haired girl summons a gigantic sword named Demise Argus and uses it to kill monsters. She then observes that she's gotten strong enough to help her big sister Lydia. As she walks to the exit, she wonders if staying in a dungeon to train for 3 years might be overdoing it. When the girl reaches the city, she is dumbfounded by how much everything seemed to change in only 3 years. Shops were selling new items, people were wearing different attire, and a strange vehicle almost hit her. As she ponders about what happened to their war with the evil gods, a strange masked man greets her from an alley. The man knows her name, Sylphie, and reveals to her that she's actually been training for the past 3,000 years. It turns out that time flows much differently within the dungeon she was training in than in the outside world. While walking with the man, Sylphie tries to ask him who he is, but he just reveals that he used to serve Lord Varvatos alongside Lydia thousands of years ago. She happily asks how they are now, but the man tells her that Varvatos died a long time ago. However, his soul reincarnated into the world once more and is enjoying life under the name Ard Meteor. If Sylphie wishes to find out what happened to her big sister Lydia, then it would be better for her to ask him. At school, Headmaster Gold is having a meeting with Ard and his friends where he explains to them that their academy is planning to have a school festival next week. They would be putting on shows as well as a Sword King battle tournament. He won't force them to participate in the tournament, but the headmaster wishes for their participation in the show. Ard asks the 2 girls if they want to do it and they excitedly agree. And finally, Headmaster Gold shows them the real reason why he wanted to meet with Ard. They had received a threatening letter demanding that they cancel the school festival. What's more concerning is that the letter is made of human skin. The letter was signed by the demon cult Lars Al Ghul. The reason why he's hoping Ard joins the show and also patrols around the school is because he can fend off the threat. Of course, Miss Olivia will also help him, and she's already recruiting people who might be able to help. Ard and the girls are back in their classroom when Sylphie suddenly barges in looking for Ard Meteor. She starts intimidating each of the boys in the room, asking if they are Ard. Thankfully, Olivia slams her on the head with a book and tells her to behave. Ard nods along with Olivia, causing Sylphie to identify him as Lord Varvatos' reincarnation. She demands to know where Lydia is from Ard, but Ard denies knowing about anything she's talking about. Irina gets annoyed at her and tells her that if she's looking for a fight, she can fight her instead. Seeing Irina reminds Sylphie of Lydia. She asks her who she is and Irina exclaims that she's Ard's longest friend. Left with no choice, Sylphie demands to duel Ard to make him spill everything he knows. Lydia also takes this opportunity to facilitate the duel so she can see Ard's real skills. Ard has no choice, so he accepts the challenge, but he plans to lose quickly. They go out to the academy's field and start dueling with swords. Ard was planning to lose quickly, but their fighting is so high level that it automatically raises everyone's opinion of Ard. Throughout their fight, Sylphie keeps taunting him, so he decides to land one blow before losing. However, Sylphie manages to dodge his blow and kill him, forcing Ard to truly counterattack and defeat her. Olivia announces that Ard is the winner, but Sylphie can't accept it. She summons her real sword, Demise Argus, and attacks Ard. Ard deflects the attack and Sylphie prepares to attack again. Thankfully, Olivia shouts out and stops her. Her rampaging had destroyed the environment and her sword disperses poisonous mana, knocking everyone out. She scolds her for being reckless and letting her emotions control her. Sylphie was about to answer back, but Irina starts scolding her too. Sylphie sees Lydia from Irina's figure and she cries in front of her while apologizing. Meanwhile, Ard also feels deja vu on seeing Irina console a crying Sylphie, as if Lydia was truly here. Later that afternoon, everyone goes back to the classroom where they plan to discuss the upcoming school festival. Their class would be leading the school in the production of a play. Ginny quickly suggests that they can enact the tale of the demon lord and the hero conquering an evil god. Unfortunately, their meeting was disrupted by a commotion coming from outside. It was Sylphie beating up a group of students. Irina was about to scold her again, but Sylphie points out that the others were making fun of her for being a commoner. The students haughtily admit it and even tell them that their noble class would surely earn more in the upcoming school festival. This triggers Irina and she also challenges the other class into earning more. After their altercation, they return to class and resume their discussion. Ard was voted to play the role of the demon lord while Sylphie insists that Irina be Lydia. When no one wants to be the evil god, Sylphie volunteers for the role. As for their class booth, Ginny suggests that they be a maid cafe. She even has designs for their uniforms already made up. The other girls are apprehensive about being maids while the guys are getting excited. Ginny also tells the class that if they proceed with the maid cafe, then they would be able to serve Ard as well. The girls suddenly become enthusiastic about the plan while the guys become disappointed. Outside, the masked man is watching them from the eyes of a crow. As the school festival starts, Ard and Irina patrol the school while enjoying the different attractions. An explosion in the distance captures their attention, but when they get there, it was just Sylphie quarreling with a food vendor. Sylphie accuses the food vendor of being a demon, but Olivia scolds her and vouches for the guy. She also tells Sylphie not to patrol anymore, so instead, Irina suggests she help with their booth. Irina gazes at the large tree in the middle of the academy. She always felt strange looking at the tree. Ard comments that legends say the third king of their country, the man known as the Great Sword King, is said to have sealed something special in that spot. Irina replies that even royalty doesn't know, while Olivia tells them that it's something she can't discuss. Speaking of the Great Sword King, Olivia also announced that she will be participating in the Sword King Battle Tournament. However, she also submitted a participation form for Ard, so they will both be participating. Later, Ard visits their maid cafe, but before he can enter, the wall of their classroom gets destroyed when Sylphie attacks someone who touches her bottom. Ard paralyzes the man, fixes the wall, and scolds Sylphie for going too far. Meanwhile, Ginny uses her succubus powers to get Ard to stay for a while. Inside, all the girls serve Ard, making him blush in embarrassment. Irina arrives and is about to scold Ard, but Ginny stops her. She tells her that they are just serving Ard. Irina wears the maid uniform and then tries to chase the others out, making her be the one to serve Ard. Another quarrel is about to start between her and Ginny when the school speaker announces that the Sword King Battle Tournament will be starting tomorrow. For this year's grand prize, it would be the Holy Sword, Vald Galgulus. Sylphie recognizes the name of her sister's sword, so she decides that she'll be joining the tournament. Meanwhile, Irina and Ginny also decide to join and finally continue their duel. The next day, the commentator excitedly announces the participation of the children of the three great heroes, Ard and Irina. Moreover, the living legend and founder of all swordsmanship, Olivia of the Four Heavenly Kings, would also be showing off her skills. Sylphie tears up, jealous that she didn't get her own introduction. When the tournament starts, Irina and Sylphie make quick work of their opponent. Olivia's opponent quickly withdrew upon facing her. Meanwhile, Ard also wins his round, since if he loses, he knows Olivia will suspect him. Thus, he decides to just lose in the finals. As for Ginny's match, her opponent was a big strong guy and a favorite to win the tournament. Ginny tries to block his gigantic sword, but its force blows her away. Ard realizes that she might lose, so he stands up and cheers her on, helping her focus. This gives Ginny the energy to attack her opponent and knock her out. After Ginny's win, Sylphie and Irina were called back to their cafe to help out, so Ard was the only one left to meet with Ginny. When Ginny learns of this, a twinkle appears in her eye and she invites Ard to the Miss and Mr. Beauty contest. Ard tries to excuse himself that he'll go out to patrol, but Ginny tells him that there would be a lot of people at the beauty contest, so he can patrol there. At the beauty contest, Ard observes that Ginny was right. There were a lot of people around. He notices that one of the students watching was the guy who used to bully Ginny, Alraldo. Ard goes to confront him and sees that Alraldo has gained a lot of weight. He asks him what he's doing there, and Alraldo admits that he's just there to watch. When Ginny was called on the stage, Alraldo becomes sad and remarks that she has also changed as well. Ever since that day that she met Ard, she's grown stronger and improved things for herself. Compared to her, Alraldo laments that he hadn't changed at all. Ginny's family has had the duty of serving and protecting Alraldo's family for generations. So when they were children, Ginny was always at his side as his guardian. However, she was always bad at everything she did when she was young. It made him feel like he had to be the one to protect her instead. Yet, even though he felt that way, he got frustrated at how slow she was. Moreover, his father was constantly telling him to act like a duke's eldest son. He was raised being told to think of everyone below royalty as ants. That was incredibly stressful for him, so as an escape, he began insulting and bullying Ginny. But now, he's relieved that she got the chance to change. He wants to apologize to her, but he's too afraid to face her. After the contest ends, Alraldo leaves. As for the results, Ginny and Ard win the contest. They then return to the maid cafe where it's packed full of customers. At the next round of the battle tournament, Ard was matched with Olivia. Ard was almost killed by Olivia, so he activates his barrier, causing Olivia to be blown out of the city and Ard to be disqualified for using magic. For the next match, Irina and Ginny had their fateful duel. They fight to decide who gets to be by Ard's side, and Irina manages to defeat Ginny. Meanwhile, the masked man continues to watch them, but he laments that everyone doesn't seem to go according to his plans. The school festival continues and Ard's class is about to start their play. Irina nervously looks at the gathered audience while her armor makes Sylphie see her as Lydia again. Irina is very nervous, so Ard reminds her that she doesn't have to think about performing perfectly. After all, she'll make the performance more beautiful just by appearing in it. During the play, Irina, playing as Lydia, leads her troops to besiege the castle of the evil god played by Sylphie. When the battle starts, Ard also leads his troop to join the fight. Playing as himself makes him feel so silly, but the girls in the audience just cheer him on. The play also reminds Ard of the past, when the real battle the story was based on happened. During that battle, Sylphie was about to volunteer herself, but Lydia objects and orders her to just be quiet. Later that night, Sylphie goes to talk to Varvatos and asks him if he thinks she's useless. Varvatos explains to Sylphie that both he and Lydia actually recognize Sylphie's strength. They just don't let her volunteer herself because they don't want to lose her. Lydia especially plans to make Sylphie her successor. This surprises Sylphie, but she once again reiterates her desire to help Lydia. Thus, Varvatos allows her to do what she likes and he will take full responsibility. During the next battle, Varvatos and Lydia encounter the evil god who was wielding the holy sword Demise Argus. The evil god was about to attack them, but he suddenly steps on a magic circle which promptly explodes. More magic circles also appear under the enemy's troops and they all get knocked out. Meanwhile, Lydia takes this opportunity to attack the distracted evil god and defeats him. Sylphie cheers since the trap she laid was able to help them win the battle. When someone tries to attack her, more traps appear under their feet and explode. Varvatos asks her if the traps were her doing and where she placed the traps. Sylphie smiles and reveals that she laid them down in every nook and cranny of the battlefield. Unfortunately, this also means that they don't have any way of getting out and Varvatos scolds her. After finally escaping the battlefield, Varvatos' tired army goes home with Sylphie crying from being punished. She reminded Varvatos that he promised to take full responsibility, so why is he punishing her? Varvatos wants to punish her again, but Lydia tells him that she should let it go. Thanks to Sylphie, no one died anyway, which is very rare. Back in the present, the play was a success thanks to Ard's ad-libbing when Sylphie forgot her lines. Sylphie notices a white-haired girl in the audience and she tries to call out to her in the hopes that she was Lydia. Unfortunately, it was just a random girl. Instead, the masked man appears before Sylphie once again. The next day, they were waiting for Sylphie by the arena for the continuation of the battle tournament. However, Sylphie arrives very serious looking and she informs Ard she wants to see him by the tree of the Sword King when she wins the tournament. The match starts between Sylphie and Irina, but after one quick karate chop from Sylphie, Irina falls unconscious. Later that night, Sylphie is waiting for Ard under the tree of the Sword King while holding the sword prize, Vald Galgulus. In some bushes nearby, Ginny and Irina are watching their clandestine meeting. Ginny wonders if Sylphie will confess her feelings to Ard, making Irina want to stop them. When Ard finally arrives, Sylphie explains that ever since she arrived, she was trying to decide if Ard is truly Varvatos, but now she wants to kill her so badly. She then activates the sword and it absorbs the essence from the tree. The prize was actually the real holy sword Vald Galgulus, the sword favored by Lydia. It was also what was sealed in the tree of the Sword King. She then summons her other sword, Demise Argus. Armed with two holy swords, she activates their powers and starts attacking Ard. Ard flies away and Sylphie gives chase after him. Ard notices that Sylphie was acting strange and wonders if anyone brainwashed her. Meanwhile, the girls and the masked man watch them. Earlier that day when Sylphie talked with the masked man, Sylphie tells him that she doesn't believe that Ard is Varvatos' reincarnation. The masked man is also tired of convincing her, so instead, he touches Sylphie's head and brainwashes her. He shows her Lydia's last moments right before Varvatos killed her. He then orders Sylphie to kill Ard. Back in the present, Sylphie manages to wound Ard and forces him to crash to the ground below. Sylphie celebrates her win, but she realizes that this won't bring Lydia back. She lands on the ground and decides that a world without Lydia is not worth existing in. She is about to destroy the city when Irina arrives and scolds her. Sylphie attacks her and Ginny joins in the fight. Unfortunately, the swords dispel their attacks and Sylphie kicks Ginny away, knocking her out. She's about to attack Irina too when Ard shows up in his Phase 2 form. The two fight, but Lydia's voice suddenly cries out, telling Sylphie to stop. When Sylphie heeds the voice, the masked man appears and knocks Sylphie to the ground. He then picks up her swords, but he proves to be no match for Ard. The man instead opts to fly to the air and just destroy the whole capital with the holy sword, but it suddenly reacts and he drops it in pain. Ard explains that holy swords choose their wielders. He then picks up the sword and demonstrates its full might, blowing away the masked man in a single swipe of his sword. Next, Lydia's spirit shows from the sword and she cradles Sylphie's injured body. She tells Sylphie not to blame Ard and to live her life to the fullest. The academy is going on a field trip with Ard and the girls playing cards to pass the time. Ginny keeps drawing the frenzied King of Dragons card makes her so angry that she stomps on it a bunch of times. Meanwhile, Ard notices that his former companions the champion Lydia and the magic scholar Verda have their own cards, but their depiction is far from their true appearance and personality. All of a sudden, time suddenly seems to stop for Ard, Irina, and Ginny. They wonder what's happening, but everything abruptly disappears and they fall into a white void. A kid appears before them and welcomes them as the chosen ones. The kid introduces himself as some sort of a god and explains that there are an infinite number of worlds with the past and future repeating indefinitely. However, there is a being trying to upset this order, transcend these laws, and alter the world. That being's encounter with the demon lord will greatly shake Ard's world, and one shall vanish. The kid wants Ard and his friends to eliminate that being and prevent their world from ceasing to exist. After the kid leaves, Ard and the girls wake up to find 2 moons above them. Ard concludes that they seem to have been transported to ancient times. Long ago, a certain event caused one of the moons to be lost. It was an event that occurred during ancient times. Since the moon currently exists above them, then that means they are in ancient times. Judging from the surroundings, Ard also concludes that they are in the Machina district of the Vardia Empire, the great nation governed by the demon lord Varvatos. Considering that the kid told them that the being and the demon lord would meet, then they should get an audience with him. Once they achieve that, then they might be able to return to their original time. They then hear a noise from across the plains. Looking at it, they see a girl being chased by a giant scorpion that Ard identifies as a death stinger. Ginny was surprised at this since the death stinger she knows is smaller than her foot. When the girl being chased is about to get killed, Ard puts a barrier around her, and then summons countless magic circles around the monster. Its combined attack destroys the death stinger and saves the girl. Meanwhile, the girl was picked up by her boss, who proceeds to thank Ard for his assistance. To their surprise, the boss was actually Olivia herself. The girls can't help but call out her name in surprise, which made Olivia suspicious. Ard then explains that they just admire and know her reputation. Olivia releases her aura, knocking everyone out except her and Ard. She then tells Ard to follow her to their city. They reach the city the next day and the girls are amazed at the ancient architecture. Ard asks Olivia why she brought them here, so Olivia admits that he wants Ard to join their forces. Those from beyond, called the Outer Ones, are currently attacking. Ever since, the demons they give birth to have been clashing with humanity in intensifying battles. The current state of the war is thanks to their king, Varvatos, developing magic for humanity. She noticed how good at magic Ard is, so she believes that he could contribute greatly to their cause. Not only that, they can't let someone with such power roam free. Ard accepts their offer, but with 2 conditions. First, he wants Irina and Ginny to join as well. Second, he wants them to be enlisted as part of Lady Verda's forces. Olivia hesitates to do this since she doesn't want to send someone with Ard's combat prowess to logistical support. Nevertheless, she eventually agrees. Ard and the girls head to Verda's headquarters, a weird dome on the side of a mountain. Ard chose to be under Verda because he knows this would put them far away from the fighting and is relatively safe for the girls. All of a sudden, the building before them explodes in a fiery explosion. A small girl then appears and starts bragging about her successful experiment. It turns out that this girl is Verda herself, shocking both Irina and Ginny since she's so different from the way she was portrayed back in her time. After Verda restores the building, they then admit to her that they're from the future. This excites Verda, who finally accepts them as her subordinates. Then, the door abruptly breaks as Sylphie crashes into the room and starts chasing after Verda. Behind her, Lydia enters the room and Ard is slack-jawed to see her alive. Irina and Ginny are once again awestruck to see a living legend, but Lydia starts cursing Verda for not sending enough support troops. Thus, Verda opts to volunteer her 3 new subordinates to Lydia's army. Lydia wonders what she's talking about when she notices Ginny. She immediately starts flirting with Ginny and invites her to her place. Ard pushes them apart, earning Lydia's ire. She challenges him to a fight and Ard happily obliges. They go outside to a barren desert where the 2 start pummeling each other with their fists. After a long brawl, the 2 are sprawled down on the ground panting in exhaustion. Lydia admits that Ard is stronger than he looks. She wants to order him to join the front lines, but she also understands that Ard must have a reason for joining the support units with the girls. Ard asks her if she has a way to get him an audience with Varvatos, but Lydia tells him that he would need to accomplish something first and gain Varvatos' trust. During the night, Ard and the girls stay over at Lydia's villa. Lydia gleefully joins Ginny in the bath while Ard meets Lydia's servant, Latima. Ard wonders if he can still stay there even though he knows that he'll end up having to kill Lydia in the future. The next day, they all go back to the army with Ard and the girls being in the support units far removed from the front lines. Even on the off chance that someone attacks them, the magic equipment they have on should protect them. Judging from Verda and Lydia's conversations, Ard determined that they are currently in the past where he was expanding his forces and the battle against the demons and outer ones was entering its final stages. From his vantage point, it's currently the Battle of Aurelia Plains. Demons ruled over the Aurelia Plains and the combined focus of Lydia and Verda's armies took down many fortresses built there. The battle starts with Sylphie leading the charge. As the war rages on, more and more casualties and injured personnel are brought back from the front lines to be cured. Irina and Ginny do their best to carry medicines and other supplies to the army. All of a sudden, a large explosion rocks their position. It seems that an enemy was attacking them. The enemy was being led by an old man who was throwing lightning around. It seems that they planned to crush Lydia's source of supplies and medicine. However, Ard sees this as an opportunity to earn an achievement for himself and be one step closer to gaining an audience with the Demon Lord. Back on the front lines, Lydia's army, led by Sylphie, finally manages to break into the castle. However, Lydia feels something is off since their main enemy still hasn't shown himself. A soldier then reports to her that their rear is currently being attacked led by the enemy commander himself, Bulgan. In the rear, Bulgan and his soldiers confidently approach and decimate the supply lines. They then step over a magic circle Ard made and a bright beam blasts into them, defeating them instantly. Lydia and Sylphie arrive so Ard explains to them that he had already defeated the enemy. The leader seems important though, so he left him alive for interrogation. Lydia then reveals to him that the guy is actually the big general that they've been trying to take down. Thanks to his achievements, Ard and the girls are invited to visit Lord Varvatos. Ginny and Irina start complimenting Lord Varvatos' castle, making Ard feel pretty proud of himself. Inside, a fireball suddenly comes crashing straight at them and Ard creates a barrier to block it. The source of the fireball, a long-haired man, compliments Ard for blocking it. He was one of the 4 heavenly generals, Sir Alvardo. Next, Lord Varvatos himself shows up, and Ginny faints at his beauty. He orders Alvardo to leave and then greets Ard. They then proceed to go to Lord Varvatos' throne room where all his servants try to offer him help. Meanwhile, Irina and Ginny keep on singing the Demon Lord's praises. Varvatos asks them who they are talking about, so Ard explains that they are just voicing out the name they hear other people call Varvatos. It turns out that Varvatos and even Lydia didn't know that he was being called the Demon Lord. Ard finds this piece of trivia strange, since in his past life, he was already called Demon Lord by this point in time. Varvatos then reveals that there is actually someone else currently being called Demon Lord, surprising Ard more. After meeting Varvatos, Ard and the group decide to have a meeting back at Verda's headquarters. They are trying to determine why there are currently 2 Demon Lords. Verda hypothesizes that the Demon Lord Ard and the others know and the Demon Lord they know are 2 different people. This means that history is already different between the 2 worlds. Verda shares that someone might have altered history, and that alteration gave rise to this world's Demon Lord whom Ard and the girls don't recognize. Ard thinks over what the so-called god told them before. It demanded that they meet the Demon Lord and that they eliminate that being. But if those 2 demands represent the same thing, then the one that's altering history is this world's Demon Lord. Thus, if they defeat him to restore history, they might be able to return to their original time. Irina suggests that they ask Lord Varvatos for help, but Verda tells them that would be impossible. The current Demon Lord only appeared about 3 years ago and he conquered the lands between the Outer One's territory and their own in no time. They tried to negotiate but they just got ignored. Varvatos also tried to fight him, but he couldn't fully defeat him. Thus, he won't act without sufficient cause. Ginny suggests that they just reveal everything to Varvatos, but Ard tells her they haven't earned enough of His Majesty's trust. They first have to gain more achievements. At that exact moment, Lydia barges in and demands that Ard join the front lines. Of course, Ard accepts in the hopes of getting achievements. They are now marching once again with their army toward another battlefield. Lydia reveals to Ard that this time, their opponent would be the much more dangerous, Mavilla's the Curse King. Ard immediately freezes since he recognizes the name. Sylphie tries to explain that Mavilla's is one of the demon's highest ranks, making him an archdemon. However, Ard remembers him for something much more sinister. Mavilla's was one of the reasons that he had to kill Lydia. Later on the battlefield, their army is about to face an army of skeleton soldiers when Ard creates a tornado and destroys them all. He wants to ensure that they win this fight and not have history repeat itself to Lydia's death. They were about to enter the enemy's castle when it suddenly burst into flames. They rush in to see what's happening, but a head suddenly flies out the door. It was the head of Mavilla's the Curse King. Then, an armored man steps out of the castle. Ard asks him who he is and he introduces himself as the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord declares war on Varvatos and then vanishes in a puff of smoke. Back in Varvatos' castle, everyone is present at the meeting regarding the Demon Lord. Some of the ministers object to Ard and the girl's presence, but Varvatos announces that they are Lydia's guests, with significant contributions to the war. He then announces that with the Demon Lord's declaration of war, he had decided that they should settle everything within a day. For that, he will be mobilizing the whole army, the 4 heavenly generals, and even himself on the battlefield. Ard remarks that the Demon Lord had declared that he's immortal, so would Varvatos have a way of killing him. Varvatos winks at him and tells him that it's a secret. The battle would start in 3 days and they have but one objective: defeat the Demon Lord and destroy his castle. Before the war starts, Ard opts to stay in Lydia's villa where Latima informs her that Lydia is currently away organizing her army. Ard ponders how history should have changed for certain now. Those who were supposed to have died still live and Lydia hasn't been cursed either. The self-proclaimed god ordered them to correct history, but if they just leave it like this, he wonders if Lydia would still die in the future. A voice abruptly interrupts his thoughts and the Demon Lord shows up in his room. The Demon Lord tells him that the god's history isn't so easily changed. A powerful corrective force would take action and Lydia would ultimately die. The Demon Lord then removes his helmet and reveals that he's actually Ard II from another timeline. They both lived as Varvatos and were both reborn as Ard Meteor. However, he gained many things and lost them too. He points out that Ard himself hasn't lost anything yet. That is why he had chosen to cast the name of Ard Meteor, and he's only known as the complete failure, disaster rogue. Just like Ard, he was also summoned by the self-proclaimed god and was given a mission. However, he also plans to save Lydia and atone for his sins. He points out that he and Ard have the same mission so they don't have to fight. The only reason he's fighting is because the mission given to him by the self-proclaimed god is to destroy the world. The two recall the circumstances of Lydia's death. Lydia was violated by a curse, putting her under brainwashing. She lost her allies and many things ate away at her mind. It was their fault that Lydia stormed into the enemy territory all alone, and it was also their fault that she lost in battle and got turned into a threat to the entire world. That's why they had to kill her. Disaster Rogue then tells Ard that he couldn't bear the guilt so he killed himself. He then reincarnated as Ard Meteor, but everything new that he obtained also kept getting taken away by his own failures. As such, he decided to just end it all and atone for his sins. He will save Lydia, become a hateful threat to this world, and have her kill him. He offers the same path to Ard and he was about to accept it when he remembers Irina and Ginny's face as well as Lydia's spirit on his sword. He hesitates and Disaster Rogue offers him 3 days to decide. In the meantime, he will be waiting at the ruined earth. The next day, Ard and Latima are walking to the dining room with Ard still pondering over Disaster Rogue's offer. He asks Latima what she would do if her own life is weighed against Lydia's, but Latima unhesitatingly answers that she'll do anything for Lydia. During lunch, the girls notice his solemn mood but he insists that he's fine. Meanwhile, Lydia invites him to go out with her after lunch and they spend the time shopping, picking up girls, and punching each other. Lydia asks him if his mind is now cleared, so Ard asks her what she would do if she have to sacrifice everything for something precious she lost. In response, Lydia brings him to some barren ruins. He asks her where they are and Lydia explains that this is where her greatest sins were committed. This is once a city where only demons lived. Lydia was able to conquer it, but the common people wouldn't listen to them. Thus, she ordered them all killed. If they didn't kill them, their allies would have been killed. She then shares that she actually already decided to die. She's not someone who's worth sacrificing oneself to save. She then asks Ard not to change the way she dies. When they return to the villa, Lydia gives Irina and Ginny a pair of hairpins as an apology for stealing Ard away from them for the day. The next day, the war starts and the 4 heavenly generals, Lady Verda, Olivia, Alvardo, and Lydia wreak havoc on the battlefield. Meanwhile, Sylphie complains to Lydia that Ard can't be found anywhere and seems to have run off somewhere. In the ruined earth, Ard meets with Disaster Rogue and delivers his answer. He won't save Lydia. Disaster Rogue asks him why, so he explains that it's not what Lydia wants. She just wants to fight and die in a way that repents for her sins in the end. Upon hearing his answer, Disaster Rogue starts attacking Ard with his magic. Ard responds with his own magic, but they just end up in a stalemate. However, Disaster Rogue smiles since he has already planned everything out. Irina and Ginny are left behind in Lydia's villa while Ard and the others go to war. They know that they wouldn't be able to help on the battlefield, but they still haven't given up on helping Ard. Latima approaches them and tells them that Ard is calling for them. They get excited over the prospect that they're needed and they follow Latimer through a forest. Latimer explains that Ard has uncovered the truth behind the Demon Lord's immortality and has ordered them to head to the Demon Lord's castle. Ard theorizes that the Demon Lord's immortality results from the use of a secret soul separation technique and seals the soul into an appropriate vessel. Death requires both the loss of soul and body at the same time, so separating the two makes one practically immortal. However, there are drawbacks to the technique. First, the user must never be more than a certain distance away from the vessel. The other is that if the vessel is ever destroyed, immortality is lost. The vessel is most probably at the castle, so if they are able to destroy it, they win. The battle between the two armies is currently just a diversion, and Ard has discovered a secret passageway into the castle. The three girls are suddenly attacked by the Demon Lord's soldiers, so Latimer urges the two to go ahead while she holds the enemies back. Meanwhile, the war continues on the battlefield and Sylphie wonders where her big sister Lydia headed into. In the Demon Lord's castle, Irina and Ginny find a bright large crystal in the middle of the castle. They determine that it's probably the vessel housing the Demon Lord's soul, so they prepare to attack it simultaneously. Unfortunately, a magic circle activates underneath them and the two girls are tied up into two crosses. They try to escape, but Latimer abruptly appears and tells them that the restraint spell also seals away their magic power. Meanwhile, the dire situation is being broadcasted right in front of Ard by Disaster Rogue. He offers to set the girls free if Ard joins his army. Even if Ard rejects him, he's not going to hurt the two girls. However, he's not sure what will happen to them when Varvado's army reaches the castle. Irina asks Latimer why she's siding with Disaster Rogue, so Latimer elucidates that what she's doing is all for Lady Lydia. Irina starts to panic, but Ginny tells her that she can easily get out of that situation. If magic is restricted, then they should just use atypical magic. The two girls then use script magic to destroy the cross and free themselves from their bindings. Latimer is still unfazed, however, and just summons her minions. Their battle is about to start when Lydia arrives in the middle of them. It turns out that the hairpin she gave to the girls monitors their current statuses. Lydia asks Latimer to stop, but Latimer declares that she'll let the world be ruined if it means saving Lydia. She summons her minions again, but they prove no match to Lydia, who defeats all of them and knocks Latimer unconscious. Lydia is happy that Latimer showed such concern for her, but she had already accepted whatever fate befalls her. She fights against more monsters and then destroys Disaster Rogue's vessel, rendering him mortal again. Disaster Rogue cries out in irritation at Lydia's appearance, but he still doesn't surrender when Ard asks him to. Ard asks him if he truly wants to save Lydia, or is he just trying to save himself from the guilt of killing her. He points out that Disaster Rogue is until the end, just using Lydia. They have always followed their selfish wishes, so Ard requests that this time, they should just let Lydia have her wish. Disaster Rogue still doesn't agree with him and instead starts chanting a long spell. Ard also chants his spell, transforming into his Phase 2 form. While they cross swords, the two recall their last words with Lydia before she died. Lydia was angry at Varvados for accepting the ceasefire and for letting the demon nation exist. Lydia wants to crush them while they still have time, and she calls Varvados a traitor for changing their goal. Varvados answers back that if she wants to fight them badly, then she can do it on her own. In reality, he just didn't want her to fight and die anymore. Disaster Rogue regrets not speaking her true feelings that day. That's why he wants to save Lydia and give her a chance to live. While their swords are clashing, Lydia's spirit from Disaster Rogue's sword appears and looks sadly at him. Disaster Rogue loses his strength and Ard slices at him. While he's bleeding and dying, he begs Ard to remember the days they spent with Lydia. Disaster Rogue admits that he only understood how he felt for her when she lost her. He truly loved Lydia. Ard buries his sword into Disaster Rogue's chest, who warns Ard that he's killing Lydia all over again with his actions. As he lies dying, Ard and the girls are wrapped in gold light, signaling the completion of their mission and their return to their original timeline. Before they go, Lydia asks the girls if the world in the future is a place where everyone can live with a smile, and the girls tell her that it is. Lydia smiles, knowing that their sacrifice isn't for nothing, and she asks them to convey one last message to Ard. Back on the battlefield, the Demon Lord's army goes to a full retreat and Varvados announces their victory. Lydia compliments him for his victory and Varvados asks her what happened to Ard. Alas, Lydia just smiles and tells him that they went home. Meanwhile, Ard manages to talk to the self-proclaimed god again. He tries to ask them who they really are, but the kid just promises that he is an ally for now. Before he leaves, Ard wishes that they never meet again. Ard and the girls are then woken up by Sylphie telling them that they have already reached their destination. It turns out that they went back right where they left, on their school field trip. Ard notices that the two girls are still wearing the hairpins Lydia gave them, showing that what they experienced isn't just a dream. After they disembark from the carriage, Irina whispers to Ard the message that Lydia gave her. No matter what happens, no matter where they are, they will always be best friends. He then feels Lydia's spirit urging him to go on, and Ard smiles, joining Irina and Ginny on their school trip.